Good evening. Let's welcome to the Safford City Council meeting. Reminder, if you have a cell phone, would you mute it or turn it off? It's up to you. We have a full quorum. Our Pledge of Allegiance is going to be offered by Councilman Mike Andazola, followed by the opening prayer. Would you remain standing for both, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, Lord, we come before you, Father, for tonight, Father God, and Lord, we just ask, Father, that you give us wisdom tonight, Lord, in making decisions for the better of the community. Father, we pray for our first responders, and we pray for rain, Father. We ask, Father, that you provide that in Jesus' mighty name. In Jesus' name we say amen. Amen. Before I go on any further, I'd like to recognize Councilman Gene Still. It's his birthday. 50s never looked so good on the guy. And he's turned 50 today, and he's holding firm to that. And so, Gene, in your service, and you're actually here with us on your birthday, I appreciate that. Would you pass that down?
Kids that are 50.
Yes. We have citizen comments on agenda items. I have one. Tammy, we're good on. That's the only one. Non-agenda items, none. And Mr. David, would you like to speak during the agenda item?
Maybe how far along?
It's right off the butt. It's right off the bat. But it's right. It's that too. So, okay, no problem. So with that, we're going to. Yes, like that. Thank you. With that, we're going to adjourn our regular meeting for a public hearing. Our public hearing on the budget and tax levy for fiscal year 2021-22. John? Oh, I'm sorry, public?
Alma will speak.
Huh?
Alma.
Alma wants to come up? I didn't say anything. Alma just said the public, and I didn't know if you were going to be public today or if you're going to be staff, so.
I'll just say a quick blurb. So, Mayor, good evening, Mayor and Council. Staff has provided budget presentations over the last few months. The tentative budget was approved on May 24th, setting the maximum level expenditure at $81,027,139. That included $1.14 million, which was designated by Council for Parks and Recreation, and it also includes contingency of $8 million. So this budget also is to request to set the property tax at $0.5135400 of value. This rate is staying the same as the previous 3 fiscal years. So although we're not increasing the rate, the increase in property values will increase our revenues. Therefore, we have to do a truth in taxation. So tonight we'll have the public hearing, and then we'll bring this back to council at the next council meeting on June 28th. All required notices have been published per state statutes, and at this time, if you have any questions, I can answer them.
I have a question. You said we're not raising the rate that we charge. Is that correct?
Councilman Field, that is correct.
Okay. So I guess I don't understand when I read it that, you know, a house valued at $100,000, the tax would now be 51 something versus 49. So how is that different if we didn't raise the rate?
So, Mayor, Councilman Seal, our current rate is 0.5135. That is our current rate. We the minimum rate that we can set and not decrease our revenues would be that 0.49. So, in following, though, in previous years, Council has agreed to keep the tax rate the same, which is the 0.5135. That was the current year's and the prior 2-year tax rate. So basically what the truth in taxation authorizes us to collect more revenues. So although the rate's not changing, we are collecting more revenues.
I understand that part. The part that's confusing, I think, to me and possibly to other people, is that we talk about without the increase, the tax on a $100,000 home would be 49 something, and it makes it sound like we've raised it to where it's now going to be 51 something. So why do we mention the 49 if we
So-
haven't raised or
Yeah,
changed it?
Mayor, Councilman Seal, it is required by state statute for us to publish that notice with that verbiage.
Yes.
Mayor,
Go ahead.
Mayor Collins, Councilman Seal, so if you kept your levy the same, you would actually have to reduce your tax rate. So with the tax rate remaining the same, the levy is going up by $9,900. That's why you see that gap. So if you wanted your levy to remain where it is today, you would have to reduce the rate down to the 49 in order to make it come out to the same levy.
Right, I understand, but that was never a proposal, so I don't have a problem with it stating that the property tax will increase because of property value increase. But it just seems like when you put that other number in there, which we didn't intend to use, to the best of my knowledge, then it looks to people like it would have been this, but now you're gonna charge me this.
And that's required by state law, as Alma said, but again, if you wanted to keep your levy, your ultimate revenue stream the same, you would literally have to reduce the rate.
Reduce it down to the 4.
Right, and then when you look at property tax, there's two components. There's the existing property, which then gets revalued, which is why you have the increase without the rate changing. But then there's also a new construction component, which will add also to the amount of money that people will pay. Even if the rate is the same, it will generate even more revenue because now there's new construction that wasn't on the rolls the prior year that's on in the current year.
Right, no, I understand all of that,
Okay.
it makes sense. What the confusing part is for people to say, when we say, if we hadn't have done this, the rate, you would have paid 49 something, but you're gonna pay 51 when in effect, we didn't change anything.
Right.
We left it the same.
Right, and the wording is guided by state statute to the point where even the fonts are required to be what the state requires, so we can't alter the language in that ad in any way.
Okay, well, I think if we can't alter the wording, the college should would put out a press release and let people know. Because when people read that, they're automatically going to assume we raised their property tax. And I think that, having the wording the way it is one thing, but I think we need to have a press release at the same time to let people know, what we've done. That's what the college did, in fact, was let people know.
Okay, we'll work on something, right, something.
Because we've talked about this before. We know we have to do it in a certain verbiage and font and everything like that, but a little bit more effort has always been asked every year to kind of explain to the public, give them a little bit more information.
It can't be in this document necessarily, but we could put supplementary information out there in the form of a press release or something, just to let people know we haven't raised them.
We can take care of that.
But now I'm not the only one that feels that way.
No.
And it said that you have to advertise it in the paper and you have to post it and all that. Is it posted online too?
Correct, Mayor Councilman Lopez, that is correct. Posted online. It's a public notice that's on Facebook. We publicize it in the paper, and again, it's the exact verbiage that the state requires, and when it's printed on the paper, in the newspaper, the local newspaper, it does have to be very specific to the size.
And I guess it goes not just to you, it goes to everybody that's putting stuff online or in the paper. We don't always understand your jargon and the way you guys word things. And therefore, I know the public doesn't either. So I'm asking you to be as kind to them as you can so they can understand what you're talking about. Sometimes you guys leave things out and it's confusing to the public. And so I'm just asking that be watched a little bit more.
And Mayor Councilman Lopez, I do believe that in the blurb on the website, it does explain it a little bit further, stating that we are not increasing the tax. I had to look at Cabrinics, I'm pretty sure so when you click on the link actually says that that we are not increasing the rate, and it explains further right there. But then when you actually open the file document, the document is the required document that's per state statutes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. David? Your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Paul David. Address is 953 West 16th Street. Happy to be a Safford resident, and I'm not representing the Board of Supervisors, just as a Safford resident. Councilman Seal, we struggle with that same, the truth in taxation, the way that the wording is set up is it does tend to beat the public elected officials about the head and ears, the way they have it, and the problem, as you have referred to, is that the perception is reality, that people see the tax increase and then they aren't looking for anything else other than, oh my gosh, they've raised rates again this year. My purpose of my being here, and just as an aside, we had four different levels. We could have dropped the rate, we could have left it, we could have raised it, and we could have raised to the maximum. There were two higher levels, and we ended up looking at the level that you can, because it wouldn't raise it. We're getting more money this next year, but only because the valuation is increasing and the tax base is increasing. So we're seeing a valuation increase, but we chose to choose instead of a 2.75, we went to a 2.60, which is a 5% reduction, and that kept us from having to be in the newspaper. And so it's a cost versus benefit. We figured that the bad press and the questions was worth the losing a little revenue. The caveat, though, is if you leave it too low, then if you hit a year where you really need the revenue, you can only increase it a certain amount. But the reason I'm here, and I appeared earlier last week at EAC, is that just to thank you for your stewardship, but just to ask you to continue to be aware. Businesses can raise their prices. People who are working can go get a side job or make more money, work harder, or work overtime. But there's a component in our community of people on fixed incomes who struggle with any kind of an increase in their tax rate or increase in what they pay. And so I'm just here to advocate for them, and I'm not saying that we do it any better, any differently, but we just that's just something that I'm maybe it's the years in the funeral home where you see people who, they've gone through an illness, they've spent all their money, and then they have a funeral. And so I became a little more sensitive because of that. And so that's just our reality. We have people who don't have any elasticity. And thank you for thinking about the widows and orphans and people who are having difficult times. And I know that you do. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Going once, going twice. We're going to move on. We're going to close the public hearing and reconvene into a special meeting. Brings us to item 10.1, final budget adoption. Alma, this will be a roll call vote.
Mayor and Council, once again, just want to remind you the tentative budget was approved, setting the max expenditure limitation of $81,027,139. It does include the $8 million of contingency and $1.14 million designated to Parks and Recreation. The budget also includes $15 million, which is for a possibility of funding for the PSPRS unfunded liability. You have any further questions? I can answer them.
I'll move we approve resolution number R21-015.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? I'll entertain a roll call vote. We'll start down onto my left. That'll be Councilman Seal.
Aye.
Councilman Lopez.
Aye.
Councilman Anazola.
Aye.
Councilman Brad Hemphill.
Aye.
Vice Mayor.
Aye.
Councilman McGoy.
Aye.
And myself is an aye. That's going to go ahead and close the special meeting, reconvene to regular meeting. Items 12.1, the coronavirus grant.
Hey,
Huh?
I don't know if you make a motion or how you go about it. I was gonna try to ask to see if, we could move, 14.1 up, 14.3.
Okay, I'm okay with that. I'll move it up. I know that Mr. Buckley needs to get home to his family. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and bring up 14.3, the University of Arizona MOU for equipment usage. John?
Good evening, Mayor, council, members of council. Staff is seeking approval for a memorandum of understanding between the city and the University of Arizona. Essentially, what we're doing is providing the university with the use of a crane, essentially, to do some lifts up on top of the mountain. I was in conversations with Mr. Buckley. We came up with an MOU that covered those lifts, and also we worked in a budget for that service, which is based on FEMA rates. So my understanding is in the past we've done similar work with them, and so they basically, staff will bring the device, the crane, up the mountain, leave it there. It will be the university staff that actually uses the crane to do the lifts. There are 2 of them that are going to be performed, and when the lifts are completed and the mirror is put back, then staff will go get the vehicle and bring it back down.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Now back to 12.1.
Mayor Council, so tonight, I'm here to request, that, council designate city manager Gisela as authorized representative, to complete necessary forms to apply for the coronavirus global recovery fund grant. This is a grant that's a part of the ARPA, which was approved, by the federal government in March of 2021. And so the portion that will be, designated to City of Safford, we will be receiving $3,334,123, and we'll be receiving it in 2 payments, equal payments over the next, we'll receive the first payment within the next 30 days, and then the second half will be received as soon as June. So the difference between these funds and Arizona's CARES funds is that, the state, will not alter the amounts that were calculated by the federal government. The state is simply a pass-through, so this is the amount that we will be receiving. The federal guidelines have been released. The last week or so, we received some documentation on what type of projects would be allowed with these funds, and so staff is still sorting through that, and we'll bring something back to council at a later date. But at this time, we do want to ask that you authorize and designate City Manager Casella to complete all the forms so that we can receive those funds.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 13.1, Resolution 2117. Lance?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and Council to approve and adopt Resolution R21-017, resolution authorizing the City Manager to enter into a coronavirus response and relief supplemental appropriations or CRISA Act grant agreement with the Federal Aviation Administration as part of the airport's coronavirus response grant program. The city submitted to the FAA a CRISA Act airport grant application in February for federal funds to be reimbursed up to $13,000 for airport operational maintenance expenses directly related to the Safford Regional Airport, incurred no earlier than January 20th, 2020, and the period for reimbursement or acceptance of this agreement is 4 years reimbursement. Similar to the CARES Act that we got for the airport of $30,000, expenses can be used for operational expenses, and we've already submitted for that reimbursement. This is another $13,000 they offered us, and so we're willing to take it if you're on board for it.
I'll move we approve Resolution R21-017.
Second. Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 14.1, Airport Engineering Consultant. Vance?
Mayor and council, this is a request to authorize the city manager to enter into an airport agreement with CNS Engineers out of Phoenix to provide airport engineering consultant services for our airport for a period of 3 years with up to 2 one-year renewals after the initial period. As you're well aware, CNS Engineers has been our consultant for the past 10 years. We've had 2 other agreements of the same extent, 3-year contracts with 1-year renewals. In March, per statute, we did a request for qualifications and had 4 consultants respond. And on April 14th, we reviewed those qualifications, and our committee unanimously agreed that CNS is the qualified consultant we want to stick with. So staff is recommending that Mayor and Council authorize the city manager to enter in this agreement with CNS Engineers for the continued airport engineering consultant services. Any questions on that?
We'll entertain a motion.
So moved. I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. 14.2, rental service agreement, Alma?
Mayor and Council, our current contract with Mission Linen is expiring in August of 2021. Staff has requested proposals for laundering services, and we received quotes from Cintas, Mission, and Prudential. I've provided you a table in your packet that shows the comparison. Cintas has come back with the lowest quote, and so staff is recommending that we approve their contract and designate the finance officer to move forward with the contract.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I didn't see fire extinguishers on here. Don't they provide us fire extinguisher?
Mayor Councilman Lopez, they do not. And that is a service that Cintas does provide, and that is a service that we can look into. And I know that Lance has already been in contact with Cintas to see if that's a service that would be at a reasonable cost.
Okay, I thought in the past we did utilize them, but we're going to look into it because they do provide that too.
Mayor Councilman Lopez, that is correct. We will look into that. They do provide, so the laundering services, they provide the mats that are in all of the buildings, towels for cleaning, the mops, and those types of items. So
Yeah,
they will continue to provide all of those.
I saw the miscellaneous, but I didn't see the extinguisher, so I'm wondering where they go. But I won't talk about the fire this weekend, so okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Brings us to item 14.4, the professional service contracts. John?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, members of Council. Staff is seeking approval for a professional services contract with Lydia Newkirk. Obviously, Lydia was our previous HR director. The contract is for up to 480 hours. The contract is based on basically utilizing hourly rates. So instead of having a time frame and paying a lump sum, we're charging an hourly rate. I do want council to know that we did make an offer to an individual to join the team as an HR director. She did accept. So she's going to begin on July 12th. So the contract still will be required to help that person make a transition, get her up to speed on, you know, how the city operates and give Lydia a chance to show her how our systems work. But it would obviously significantly reduce the amount of time that we would need to keep her on, because part of this was just to have her fill in the absence of an HR director. So by having the hourly rate, that really works out to our benefit. She works on an as-needed basis, so this contract would cover those services.
Move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? I know that when we were talking about stuff in the past, Lydia did come to us and she was talking to us about how we needed to up our benefits and all of this. And I kept saying, no, they only chase after dollars. And that's exactly what Lydia did today. She's chased after dollars to go somewhere else to work for money. So anyway, we have a motion second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I oppose. Brings us to item 15, announcement of current events.
Mayor, I'd like to update the council in reference to the 4th of July. 4th of July will be July 3rd, and the fireworks will be July 4th.
Okay. Anybody else? Items, go ahead.
Would it be appropriate to mention something I'd like to see on the future agenda?
Sure.
We've approved some funding for recreational amenities. And before we just jump out and spend it all, I'd like to be able to take a good look at that and see what's going to be most beneficial for the community. And speaking to John, one time you had mentioned that maybe we would have a panel made up of citizens from the community. Each council member would be able to ask someone to serve on that. But I think we have a wide range of needs here, a wide range of ages and interests. And I think it would be a good thing to have a committee together where they could actually sit down and discuss some things that bring back to us to look at. But I don't know if anyone else is interested in something like that or not.
Well, alas, what was 240,000, and we went crazy after that.
We didn't go crazy.
Yeah, well, anyway, I know that's on the table. I certainly don't think we're going to be shovel-ready by next month, but I, too, want to approach this with involving possibly other people's ideas on where we're going. And we do need to talk about the locations, because there's a lot of pros and cons in the different areas to me. And so I just want to go forward cautiously and make things right.
Mayor?
John?
Mayor, council members of council, at the last meeting, we inserted into the budget basically the CARES Act money, that amount that freed up as a result of funding the police salaries. That's all we've done at that point. We did have some feedback, we had some discussions, and so anything we do going forward will be subject to a discussion. I think there was some consensus on things like IGAs with the school district that we can move forward with. I think there was a strong consensus that that was a good cost-effective way to go. I think that there was definitely interest in splash pads, and so at the current time, staff is looking at doing some work on design. Now, there were a couple of locations to discuss, so my goal is to have those budgets for those items worked up so that staff can bring you options, right? So we can look at splash pads if we have dual locations, what are the pros and cons, what are the costs for each, so you can see those as a body, discuss them, and then make a decision on that. I think there are other items that we need to discuss. Again, we presented a very broad palette of options for recreation. So one of the other items that we want to revisit is, my understanding would be the Gila River Walk. I'd like to schedule a work session on the 25th of this month to come back with that and revisit that in greater detail. And I think there was consensus that we'd be able to do that. And then the other component of this was what Councilman Seal was addressing, which is the public input process. And I think there are opportunities for us to use that process, again, if it's something council is comfortable with. But what we would do in that sense is to have council make an appointment, but we would still create guidelines and parameters for those aspects of recreation that are longer term. So if we look at the property at 10th and 10th, we've got a blank slate. Maybe that process is a good process for that area within the city. It's a more long-term process. We can discuss, again, the pros and cons of convening a panel, or if you want to go in a different direction, you can do that as well. But I think that the public input process really lends itself well to that particular portion of the program. So there are several aspects of it that we're looking at. Again, trying to cover both long and short-term goals and desires, what our budgetary outlays can be, setting parameters, so we're not just going out to the public and saying, what do you want? We have to sit down and decide, what are we comfortable spending? What are the types of amenities that we want to have? So we guide the conversation by giving them an idea of what's possible, and not just a blank check, and then people are disappointed because they were, shooting for something much higher. So I think we're going to continue to have a conversation on these subjects. I think it's a multi-layered conversation, which includes both long and short-term goals for recreation.
I thought that's what we were planning on doing anyway, was having a work session on it and then discussing that. So I'm okay with moving forward with the work session, for sure. So I thought that's what we had planned.
Now, the work session on the 25th will focus specifically on the Gila River Walk.
I think
we
can. I think we'll have time to kick the can on the other thing.
Okay, well, you guys, if that's a conversation you want to drive, we can do that, certainly. I guess we'll have to put it on the agenda. But we don't have any materials. We could try to prepare something. I don't know if we could get any budgets.
I've already seen a kind of a site map of a park. I think Lance could bring that along with what Eric has, Langley has kind of displayed to you and had talked about, and you guys have been kicking the can. I think you could present what you have to us and let us help massage that a little bit, and then that helps give you guys a little bit of direction as well too at that specific site, and then hear what you guys have as well moving forward, and that gives us an opportunity to kick the can if we wanted to involve the public, and each one of us bring a member from the public to the table and let them discuss and create as Councilman Steele is asking, create a little committee to move forward. But I think that I agree with Manager John when he's saying we need to have some kind of guidelines, because if I ask the community, they want me to build what FMI has up in Morenci. We're not FMI Morenci. We're Safford, Arizona, where we want to support every single business that's in town. And if you have a weightlifting gym, we want them to flourish and do good. We don't want to be in that business as government. So.
Well, Mayor, council members of council, we'll see if we can put some additional things together on that. If we do want to go in a committee direction, then we would create a committee and we would do the direct appointees. And then at that point, we could have a tasking for them that literally lays out the guidelines under which they would work. Part of that could be even going out to the community at some point, whatever they put together. But again, by bounding that conversation, as you say, we don't end up with unrealistic expectations.
Right. I just don't want too much bureaucracy involved. It seems like when that happens, then we don't get anything done.
Okay, when we decided about these work sessions.
First of all, Tammy, are we getting way out of hand here?
Oh.
Okay, so we've got something that we're talking about that we need to bring on a work session, and so I think we need to stop that. Correct? I want to hear you say yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Steele.
I can only be here till about 9:45 on that particular day, so I don't know how long this meeting's going to last, but just to let you know up front.
All right,
at
I think we could.
10,
We do it at 7 o'clock. We should be out a couple hours to kick it around. Does that sound good?
start whenever you want to. I just have to leave at 9:45.
Okay.
And I'll be out of town.
You'll be out of town?
But I'll provide some,
You'll get provided some.
right, I'll provide.
And
some
if you have any information, would you do that too,
Yep.
please? That'd be great.
Definitely.
Appreciate that. Everybody else okay for that date?
I'm not starting before 4, but.
Where do we?
I would like to start at 4. It's hot.
Where do we now make recommendations for agenda items next time? Where's that part of the conversation now?
This is where you do it.
This is where we
Yeah,
do
you
it.
just discuss the item.
Okay.
Yeah, we went too far.
Okay. On the agenda items, is that getting you covered so far?
Yep.
The work session, when we changed it to where we're going to let people talk,
Right.
we're having them all the time now, and it's kind of, I think, getting away from us somewhat to talk. Like this next time we talked, I was just hoping it was us, and it loosened it up to where we could talk more frankly. To me, that was the idea of having work sessions like that. But now, the way most of this is coming for us now, they could just be agenda items anyway. So, and I know you said let them talk during work session. I thought express their opinion was good too. The public, I mean. But some work sessions, I wish they would just back like they used to be, where we talked.
I think being cautious on this, I think work sessions that we have scheduled on a Friday don't need to involve the entire staff, is what I believe I'm hearing. I believe that could be whatever department that we're involved with, and that way they have their free time, and plus they're not using, I don't know how it works, but, anyway, I'll be cautious, yeah, that's what I'm asking
Mayor,
for.
council members of council, I agree there, in some of the work sessions, I think we could invite certain staff depending on the subject matter. In terms of the public input, obviously that's a question for you guys to address.
I like it.
I would like to just offer up the idea that if we do a panel, if in fact council chooses to appoint a committee to look at recreation, it wouldn't be that they would have their own meetings and their own agendas and they would work through the process, right? So in terms of the work session itself, what we would be addressing is whether or not we want that committee. And again, I'm trying to address your issue if I'm getting it right. So they wouldn't necessarily be at the work session on Friday morning on the 25th, although we could still have public input, but it wouldn't be to that extent. On that work session, what I would want to see is us decide on whether or not we would have that, and then we would develop a process by which they were convened and then tasked with whatever it is that council wanted them to do.
I'd like to be clear on what we're talking about before we ask somebody else, because if we get a panel and then we don't take their recommendations, then you know how that happens sometimes.
It'd be a good time to talk about it at work session.
Okay, we'll talk about it at the work session.
Hopefully that was okay.
You started to shake a little
Yeah.
bit.
I felt the tension, that's why I looked up. Anybody else have anything under announcement of current events? We got the parade on Friday?
July 3rd.
Third?
Saturday.
Saturday, okay.
And fireworks on July
4th,
4th.
yes.
Oh, wow, that got changed again.
Yeah,
Who knows, it could change tomorrow.
Yeah, Mayor, just one item, sorry. I'm going to be going out of town as of July 5th, so the first meeting in July, I plan on not having, so we'll only have one meeting in July, it'll be the second meeting, so I just wanted you to know that.
Well, why do you get to make up your mind if you want to have a meeting or not? Maybe we might have one without you.
Well, I just think that would be not advisable.
Not, wouldn't be cool?
And I actually consulted with Tammy, and she agreed, so.
Okay. Wow, he's taking away our meetings, you guys. Wow.
Nobody talked to Tammy, that makes it unanimous.
Interesting. All right.
I'm not touching it.
Item 16.
I was asked to give a brief update as to the progress of the website redesign. Just to give you a little bit of background, this redesign was scheduled to take place 5 years after the last contract signed back in 2016. And the reason behind the 5-year redesign is to refresh or freshen up the website to keep it up to date and to kind of just keep up with the times of how websites are working now. The redesign will operate very similar to the current website with, of course, some modifications with the look and the operation of the website itself. We're in the process of changing the menus and some of the navigations to make the links a little more user-friendly and to give an overall goal to give visitors the website as much information as possible. So we want to give them, all the information that we can on our website. Hopefully this will come up and looks okay.
Sam, if you're not being able to go through it, then that definitely means public ain't gonna be able to go through it.
There we go.
I'm just kidding.
No, this is just a Gantt chart of with our Civic Plus vendor, and just to give you an idea where we're at, we have, I believe, 63 items that we are currently working on for this website redesign. Right now we're on item 16. So it might seem like it's been taking a long time to get this where it's at, but it is one of those things that we've been talking about it for over a year now, and so it kind of seems like it's been on the plate for a long time, and we just barely started the actual redesign in January, so.
There you go. How's that?
So, yeah, I don't know, is that a little better?
Yes.
So, yeah, we had our kickoff meeting, and then we went through the design discovery forms, the mood board layouts, and approvals. We do have a committee consisting of a member of each department that is basically given direction and helping us decide what we're going to have on the website and how we want to have it laid out and that type of stuff. So each one of those liaisons will be getting training on how to update the website and that type of stuff, being able to manipulate it so that they can keep their section of the website up to date. And so that's all I have for right now.
Sam, upon this update, or what you're doing, you're creating this new, is there any way, unless I'm just the only one that feels this way, that you can update the phone service so I don't feel like I'm talking to a computer when I call City of Safford? I actually feel like make it home, make it, I mean, have you listened to it? Have you really,
Yeah.
you call it and it just sounds like a computer.
Yes, they're auto attendants, and so that's what they're designed to do, is just basically direct somebody quickly without having to actually talk to somebody. But it is generated by a computer program, so we lay out, what we want it to say, and then it does.
Could you find somebody with a good speaking voice and create that environment instead of that?
We probably could.
Because I sure think it'd be more presentable than.
Yeah.
To me, it's just embarrassing if somebody from out of town was wanting to call and get a hold of our engineering department or whoever, and it just sounds like it's just so automated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
it's
takes
not personal.
It does take quite a bit more to do that, because every time you change one little thing, you do have to re-record the whole thing. So that's why we have it broke up the way it is and the way it sounds right now. But we can look at.
It'd be a wish list for me.
We could look at doing something different, definitely.
It is a little rough.
Huh?
It's a little rough.
It is a little rough.
Roughly, when will this be finished?
And how much?
Never? I know, it's been forever.
It is a moving target, just because depending on when we have our information to them that they need, and then when they get back to us, it's we're constantly going back and forth, and so the date kind of moves because they have to allocate resources to create different parts of the website and that type of thing. We do have, I would guess, third quarter this year, we should have something, maybe Octoberish. We'll have something that we could probably present earlier than that, but
It'll be
the
time to
final,
start over again.
Yeah.
the final design should be by October, I would say.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for Sam?
I
Go ahead.
do like the idea of you addressing the individual departments that are injecting their own websites for this, because some of it's gotten a little generic too, or a little lack of, and then I also need to talk to the manager about phone etiquette. That seems to have a little discouragement there too. So I'll call you tomorrow. Okay.
Anybody else? Thanks, Sam. We're going to go ahead and close our regular meeting and reconvene to a work session. Our work session on item 18 is a food truck regulations. Susan, you should come on up. Tell us what can and can't happen and whatever you felt we need to do.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. So previously we had a conversation about our food truck regulations. Council gave staff some direction. I sent an email out to you that I wanted to bring this back to you, and I am ready to take it to the Planning and Zoning Commission next Monday. So if you give me, direction on what you want the text amendments to say tonight, then we can move it forward quickly and get the text amendment through the process. So I just have a few slides here with some questions. So the current language says that you may occupy a property for a period of time not longer than 48 hours and not the same property more than 10 times a year. And council recommended changing the 48-hour time limitation to 3 consecutive days. So if you're fine with that language, I can move on with that. I'm just looking for some confirmation from the council. And I'll go through all of this. We can also come back to it if it's easier for you. So also, council suggested change the number of days from not more than 10 times in a calendar year to basically not more than 26 days in a calendar year. I do want to point out that based on a 48-hour maximum time period, then someone could occupy a site for a total of 20 days a year. That's what our code says now. But with your 26 days a year, if it's a 3-day, if they're occupying a site for 3 days, then you have basically 8 extended weekends that somebody could occupy the same site. So I want to go back to you and say, is that sufficient amount of time? If it's 2 days, if they occupy it 2 days at a time, we're talking about 13 weekends. So keeping in mind that there's 52 weekends in a year, is that what you want to do, is 8 or 13 weekends in a year, or do you want to allow food trucks a greater amount of time to be staying at a site?
A greater amount of time.
Or as far as how many days?
On the weekends.
So there's 52 weekends in a year, so that would be 104 days if they were doing every weekend of the year for 2 days. So there's no magic number here, it's just what the council wishes. I felt like 26 days was probably rather restrictive. Generally, you're not going to have food trucks necessarily, I think, in the wintertime, but you might. So I just wanted to get some direction on council on that. What's the magic number? Just know that you can always change it. If it's not working, or if somebody's requesting more time, you can always come back and do another text amendment and modify the language.
Vice Mayor, you got some time you want to throw out here?
But why don't we just double the 26 days and double the 13 weekends? Just double them. That'd be just a starting.
Half a year.
Yeah. That'd be a starting point.
I'm hearing double.
So 52 then, we're
Or
talking?
double times
52
two.
days in a
Double
calendar
times
year?
2. Double the, what'd you say, Vice Mayor?
26 days and double the 13 weekends.
So if we had 52 days, then that would be 26 weekends with 2 days at a time. So if that works for everybody, I'll
That'd be a
change
good
that to
starting point
52.
anyway.
Again, you can always modify it if you're having problems with the food trucks. You can always change it back and reduce those days, or you can expand it further, or maybe that would fit just fine.
That's too many days to me, but I'm willing to try what you got going.
It's a starting point.
Okay? Kind of consensus with that? Okay.
Anybody else have anything on this? Not Susan, you'll bring it back to us, correct?
Yeah, I have one more thing here.
Oh, sorry.
So if they're temporary use permits, I think they should still be a temporary use permit. They should be renewed if they're on a given property on an annual basis. I want to know from the council, do you want a separate temporary use permit for each location? That's how it works currently. So each time, if they pick a location, they might want to stay there 52 times a year. But then if they go to another location, that would be another temporary use permit and another $50 fee. They have to get the property owner's signature. I'll go over that at the very end. But do you want a separate temporary use permit for each location? I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
And
My feeling on it was, I think it's good to have a temporary use permit for each location, but my problem was, do we need to charge them $50 every time? That was, or do we just? I'd like to have something where we know where they're going to be, and where we can keep track of who's where. But do we need to charge them $50 for each one?
Yep.
$50, $50 is nothing anymore.
Yep.
I think that the key is the Vice Mayor has extended the time and for us to try, and so therefore they can stay longer. And so I would be okay with that. I have heartburn at it first, but at the same time, by extending the time, I think I'm okay with it.
So you're saying if they stay in the same place, they don't have to pay the $50 each time, just if they relocate?
Each temporary use permit would be for a certain number of days at the same location. And then they would renew that annually if they want to, continue at that same location. So yes, so they would just pay one fee for the one location for maybe 52 times within a given year. Usually those people will outline those dates for me, and they can modify them, certainly if they need to. That's just a minor modification.
We'll have to see how it goes.
Go ahead.
Susan, how many do we process a year for this?
At 2 currently, so,
I-
but I
Yeah,
think.
nobody comes in and gets those temporary use permits.
I think part of the issue is our current code is overly restrictive, in my professional opinion. So I think if we open this up with these changes, we'll probably see more people applying for temporary use permits for food trucks. And lastly, the current language, so I'm looking to keep the current language, which says they must display sufficient access, parking, and maneuverability at the site. Generally, they'll give me a site plan. I help them. I give them an aerial view and help them with the site plan. They have to have written permission of the owner. I think that's a good thing. The owner of, let's say, a vacant property or whatever the case may be, should be aware of what's happening on their property. And also that their trash receptacles be emptied on a daily basis. And with that, if you're good, then I will take this to the Planning and Zoning Commission next Monday, and then it'll come back to you.
Anybody have any questions, any more comments? All right, thanks, Susan.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
You know what, how about liability? If there was, God forbid, an accident.
Susan, hang on.
A tank exploding or something like that, what would be liability, or what would happen there?
So, for instance, he's suggesting like a propane tank explosion, something like that. I guess what we want to hear from you is the city is not liable.
That's between the food truck and the private property owner, and how they work out those details are between them.
Okay.
Because it's on private property.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
so, which Vice Mayor brings up another great point, and I'll be very relaxed on how I say this, but during your special events, when they are on our streets, what happens in that scenario?
That's a completely different situation. They're on city streets, and there's insurance that's required for the whole
From
event.
each vendor, correct?
No, my understanding is the whole event.
It's the whole event?
Yes, so there is insurance that covers the whole event because it's on public right-of-ways.
Okay, so if, am I okay? If Salsa Fest is putting on a deal, they're covered by an umbrella that's listing us as, and then they're on the insurance, correct?
That's correct.
And so if something happens, of course, they're going to sue the highest bidder, which is going to be us. But nevertheless, that's how it's supposed to work. So what I'm thinking, what I kind of understand what Vice Mayor is saying too, which would agree, maybe we might have to put in some kind of a language that, I don't know, I think that, propane tanks could do something. And do we want to even step on that? Do we want to even cover that? Or is this something that you're not saying, no, I don't see it an issue?
And Mayor, I'm not saying I don't see it an issue necessarily. I've actually seen some pictures of food trucks that have caught on fire. That's probably likely a grease fire on the inside as opposed to a propane accident. They do get inspected by the health department. That's all part of the inspection, is the whole systems of the food truck. And I would say that I think because they're on private property, that's between the private property owner and the person that's on that property. Perhaps they're leasing from the private property owner to be there. All we're doing is issuing a permit, like a zoning clearance permit, to say, yes, you can do this activity on this particular piece of property. But those liability details are on the private property owner and the food truck operator.
Okay. Vice Mayor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and reconvene we're going to close our council work session and reconvene into executive session. Give us a 5-minute break.